I imagine that a lot of people probably think that Halloween is satanic or evil or demonic, but I don't really think so. You see, what you find, especially with religious people, is that there's always this kind of obsession with the demonic or the satanic. And the reason I see is that because, especially, let's say with Christianity or the Bible, there is such a strong emphasis on being a good person, living a righteous life. And that is true for most religions, of course. But you see, what happens is that when we have such a strong attachment to this kind of good person identity, this living a morally righteous life, of course, that's a good thing. What I'm saying is that if we develop an unhealthy attachment to that kind of identity, what happens is, through a part of our brain called the reticular activation system, and all this means is that it's a part of our brain that selectively focuses on only the information that is relevant to us. And we have to do this to live normal lives, because if all information was relevant to us, we would become schizophrenic and drown in the madness of the mind. And so it is an important evolutionary function for us to filter out reality. But in regards to this kind of morally righteous identity, what can happen if we develop too strong of an attachment to it is that we begin only seeing the things that affirm that identity and ignoring everything else. And there is a great danger that can happen, in which the darkness within us, the demons, if you want to say, they are able to work and do their damage, chaos, and destruction in the darkness outside of our awareness. And so they can sabotage our lives, they can destroy our lives without us ever being aware of it. And that is where this fascination with the demonic arises. Because in a way, it's our psychology, our psyche saying, there's something to pay attention to here. Because often what we are fascinated by, what we are disgusted by, what we have strong interest in, is a reflection of an inner identity, whether conscious or perhaps is in regard to some kind of unconscious traits or something in our shadow. Somebody who has a strong attachment to being good, to a religion, to being morally righteous, and is greatly unconscious of their darkness, or just greatly unconscious of certain character traits within themselves. What that person will do is they will project onto others, they will project onto the world what they have repressed or are unconscious of within themselves. And that is where you will get people who say things like, well, these certain holidays are satanic, they are evil, they are demonic. It is all just a play to reaffirm our own sense of self-identity. So that it is our ego manipulating and deluding us into saying, yes, this is who I am. And that is going to trigger a lot of people. Because nobody wants their sense of self to be disrupted. Nobody wants to have to look in the mirror and say, wow, what I experience in my reality is just a reflection of me. That I was not seeing the world clearly, but that I was seeing myself. And because there is truth, because that reality is true for me, I believe that that reality is the whole truth. And the stronger I am attached to this, any particular identity, the more I will do to defend it. But you see, a much greater way to approach life is to face your darkness, is to face your demons, to focus your attention on them. Not in a way that is constantly bringing you down or making you negative, or making you feel bad or making you feel fearful, but in a non-attached way, so that you can be aware of your destructive nature, so that you can be aware of the demons in you, so that you can see the hands of the darkness, the hands of the devil, so that it is not pulling your strings outside of your awareness. And you see how we get caught in avoiding our own darkness by projecting it onto others, so that we can say, oh yes, those traits, they belong to them, they're over there, I'm over here. There's a separation. Oh good, I'm not like those people. I'm different. You see how tricky the ego is in pulling its strings? And this isn't just something that's superficial. People since the beginning of time have lived their entire lives in this state, being manipulated. Now what are you supposed to do about this? Are you supposed to kill the ego? Are you supposed to start attacking and fighting the demons? No, demons, stop pulling my strings. No. What you do is that you realize that all things are equally important to the whole of everything. That the darkness and the light are equally as valid. And not only that, when you begin to dive deep into your own darkness, when you face those things that you don't specifically want to face, that is where a lot of your power lays dormant. Those parts of ourselves that we reject because they are unacceptable to society, to other people, the parts of ourselves that we've had to repress to fit in with other people. That is where the gold is in terms of becoming our greatest selves. And so when people get triggered by things like Halloween or things like the satanic, it is not that they are wrong necessarily. It's just that they are stuck in themselves. They are simply trapped in their own identity. And they are not to blame. It is not their fault. Because we are all conditioned in the same way. So the best way to realize ourselves, to begin a path of self-discovery, is to pay attention to all the things that trigger you, that trigger your emotions. What are the judgments that you project onto the world, onto others? What is the story playing in your head? But specifically the triggers, because each time we get triggered, it is an opportunity to reflect on our own identity. And each time we reflect, we discover more and more about ourselves. And when we become more aware of ourselves, the darkness, the dormant character traits lying in the shadow, lying in the unconscious, can emerge, and we can integrate them. We can integrate them by realizing that certain character traits are needed to adapt, to overcome certain experiences. They say new levels require a new you. And so throughout life, the universe, the world will demand better versions of ourselves. And so if we cannot integrate these dormant characteristics, then we might not be able to adapt, and we may die. Because death occurs when we encounter a situation in which we cannot overcome. And we cannot overcome a particular situation because we do not have the skills, we do not have the traits to deal with it. Because oftentimes we are stuck in our own ways, we're stuck in our own mind. We don't like change. We don't like the darkness, because with darkness comes death, with change comes death. But we have to snap out of our own animalistic nature and say, and realize that death and life are one. That death is what justifies life. That the darkness, that the contrast between dark and light is what gives everything meaning. That experience cannot happen without contrast, without the dynamic play of life. So don't spend your life playing mind games with yourself, caught in a story, a reality in which you do not want to experience. Always being triggered by the world and by other people, caught in the cycle of suffering. Just relax. Just chill, man. Life is not that serious. But we love the drama. We love judging others. We love reaffirming our own sense of self-identity. We like to feel special. And you know what? I don't even see anything wrong with these things. So long as you realize that it is just a play, that it is not true. Because in that, you can transcend suffering. You can be free from the attachments. And that is actually how we can enjoy life. We can play our roles, play these characters. We can get triggered for fun. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, we recognize that, oh, it's just God in all the different forms playing God's game. Now, not everybody is going to understand what that means. And that's okay. The point I'm trying to make is that our identity, our triggers, the things we think are a big deal, something as simple as Halloween, a day of candy, a day to recognize one's own darkness, to dress up as a character, to reject such a thing, and to label it as demonic or bad, is nothing but a rejection of one's own darkness in themselves. But in our judgment, in our triggers and projections, we have the opportunity to reflect and see the darkness within ourselves. And in this realization, we actually stop judging other people because we realize that we are really no better. In fact, we can be worse, because when you are unconscious of your darkness, of the evil that you are doing, then you create chaos and destruction, but you're not aware of it. So this Halloween, at least for one day, choose to focus on the darkness, to be aware of the darkness within you, so that it does not create death and destruction and mayhem outside of your awareness. And dress up and play these characters to embrace the dark aspects of yourself, not necessarily the evil things, but to become more whole, to integrate these repressed characteristics, to accept yourself, to allow these ugly things to be as they are, without judging, without labeling, without criticizing, without telling yourself you're a bad person. Take what you perceive to be a weakness and make it a strength. Because that is the truth. That is what it is. But you cannot develop this strength unless you first become aware of it So that is why I see Halloween as the perfect opportunity to take a moment and recognize the darkness within us. And without this recognition, there is far more evil that is done in the world. And that if people chose to consciously face the things that they are avoiding, to accept and love the ugly parts of themselves, the world would be a far better place. There would be far less suffering.